Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Top Billers Toolkit, where me and my twin brother interview top billers from all around the globe to unlock the secrets to their success. Today's guest is Dr. Al Philip Neary. Just a heads up guys, this episode is completely different to our normal episodes. Al has a PhD in behavioral psychology and spent many years running and managing juvenile prisons. He spent years mastering and understanding human behavior, and now he uses an amazing behavioral analytics tool to really understand the human that you're working with. In this episode, Al runs through a live demonstration of this software with me and Sam. So if you've ever been curious about what me and Sam are really like behind the scenes, you'll learn that in this episode. I think the brilliant thing about this episode is not only does this showcase the software, it showcases Al's deep understanding of human psychology, and it also showcases how important it is to understand the person you're working with, hiring, or speaking to. Very different episode today, but I absolutely loved it. Me and Sam were hooked from start to finish. I hope you find it valuable. So, as usual, grab a cuppa or a glass of wine, depending on when you're listening to this, and let's get into it, shall we? Wait a second, guys. Quick question for you. If you could land a new client on LinkedIn in the next couple of weeks, how much would that be worth to you? 20, 30, maybe 40K? Well, we have a pretty crazy offer on right now. If you are a recruitment business owner, then we will work with you for free and write you 2 posts at absolutely no cost. And here's the cool part. Other recruiters that have come through this free trial have managed to win new clients. They've racked up hundreds of thousands of impressions and started conversations with top-tier candidates. It's completely risk-free, so you have nothing to lose and everything to gain. If you're interested, the link's in the description below. If not, no worries. We hope you enjoy the podcast. See you later. Al, thank you so much for joining us today on Top Billers Toolkit. How are you, my friend?
I'm good.
Awesome. I'm really excited about this episode. It is a very different episode, and I'm going to get you guys to listen to this to find out why. But let's jump into the first question, which is, what's the number one tool in your toolkit, Al, whether it be a mindset, strategy, or software?
So I believe heavily in behavioral analytics. And so I utilize a software that incorporates AI to let people know how they're naturally wired compared to how they're showing up. And then I take that data and I figure out how does somebody actually operate under pressure. So that's kind of what's in my bat belt per se.
Love that. And we're going to get into a live example of this, which is really exciting. But what is the biggest benefit for recruiters using this software, Al? If we were to just summarize, why should they use this? What are the biggest benefits?
Yeah, great question. So obviously a recruiter does a great job of getting to know their client's resume, right? What they've accomplished, have they increased ROI? How many people have they led and managed? But what's missing is what's underneath that resume, right? How does somebody actually think? How do they perform under pressure? How do they communicate under pressure? So really what I bring to the table is understand the person that drives the resume.
Love that. And I was super curious about this. So I asked Al to send me and Sam a link to basically fill out all the questions. And Al's hopefully going to give us he's going to look under the hood and tell us a little bit about how me and Sam operate as people. So Al, are you ready to do this? Shall we jump in?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Let's do it.
All right.
So we filled out a bunch of questions. It took about, I think, 10 to 20 minutes. I can't remember exactly how long. Took about
10
probably
minutes.
closer to 20 minutes for me, maybe just because I was thinking about the questions quite hard. But yeah, it was relatively quick and super easy and straightforward, but interesting as well. You kind of had to think about it. And I know it sounds a bit weird saying that, but cool. Here we are. So Al,
Okay.
this is me, right? Are you just going to go through me first and then Sam, and then
Well,
how's it going
I'm
to work?
actually so the software is pretty powerful, okay? So what I'm actually gonna do is I'm gonna go through both of you identically at the same time.
Wicked. Okay.
So so what you should have seen is colored dots are you, Ben, gray dots are you, Sam. You
Mm,
guys see that? Okay.
yes.
So one of the things, and this may not apply to an executive recruiter, But one of the things is if I did have the data on, let's say, a CEO and you're placing a COO, I could stack them for that executive recruiter to show where they're going to be working well together, where
Mm,
they think differently together, which could be a source of power, source of strength, and where
mm,
there potentially could be conflict because they just operate a little differently, right?
mm,
And so sometimes you want similarity and sometimes you want opposites. It just kind of depends on the role and the tasks and decision making, right? So I found this actually very fascinating because you guys are brothers, you're twins, and man, you're almost like 2 peas in the pod, like, all the way
wow.
over. Like,
Definitely.
there is not much difference between you guys, but there is difference between you guys,
Interesting.
right? So when we go through this, and I just look at it from a standpoint of, the word influence highlights, right? So what this says is, what is your guys' need to shape decisions, to make decisions? Right? So both of you come pretty high on the Richter scale because if we look at this as like a 50% marker, you guys are sitting up there in the 80 percentile of wanting to influence and shape decisions. So from an executive recruiter's perspective, well, if you're hiring somebody in leadership, especially a CEO, you would want this result to be up here somewhere, right? They
Mm,
want to influence and shape and create, etc., right?
yeah.
You probably don't want a CEO to sit over here, right?
Mm,
That's just not a trait of a CEO that needs to be a heavy decision maker. Doesn't mean they're a bad person. It's just probably not the best role for them, right? When we look at reflective, right, the word sociability comes. This is the need to connect. This is the need to be able to communicate with people. You guys are both on the higher spectrum again, right? Of the need for connection, the need to be able to communicate with other humans. So, how do you come across to people? Friendly, social, like you care kind of
mm,
thing, right?
mm,
Admirable trait. Now, from an executive recruiter, is this important or not important for a CEO? I don't know. You probably want somebody at least sitting in the middle, right? So they don't just come off as a rude jerk all the time. But what I tell people is, if the doc comes over here, it just means they might be a little bit more introspective, right? Quieter or reflective. Doesn't mean they're rude or anything like that, but sometimes people could interpret silence in a very weird way, right?
mm,
And
yeah.
and and it just comes across weird, but it's just how that person is. Now, when we look at consistency, right? Do you want no consistency in your day, so you're okay, right, moving a million things, or do you need to be just, very 1, 2, 3, right? You know what the regimen is. You guys sit on the right around the middle, give or take, right? Sam, you like a little bit more structure than Ben, but just a tad bit, but
Mm,
nothing crazy, right? And Sam, you're a tad bit quieter than Ben, but again, nothing crazy. So you guys are very similar to where you like some consistency, you like structure, and you lean towards that, but you don't need a super structured day, right?
mm,
You don't need to go boom, 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 and these are the 12 things, and then your day is over, right?
mm.
Because that's not exactly how you're wired. Now, when it comes to precision, uh, neither one of your strengths, okay?
Yeah,
You
interesting.
guys are
Very
not
interesting.
you're not detail oriented, right?
Mm,
You guys are more, "Let's get something 80% right, 70% right. Let's throw it out there. Let's see how it works," right? And
mm,
you're okay getting feedback from the market in your guys' case, right? And then you'll tweak as needed. So what happens over here is somebody I use the word perfectionist, and I don't mean it in any sort of disrespect or bad label.
mm.
It's just somebody just really wants they just want things perfect,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Or close to perfect, right? So you
Mm,
could think of it this way, like you guys wanna, in your mind, design the motorway, the highway, but you're not the ones that wanna inspect the quality of the
mm,
work of the highway, right?
mm,
That's somebody else, okay? So now when we move down here, we're just going a little bit deeper. And this is emotional resonance, right? So this goes back to a little bit kind of to the people thing, but it says how deeply and persistently new experiences are processed. So if you think when something hits you, how do you process it, right? If we're over here on being compartmentalized, that's somebody who's just very logical. They're just going to be like, okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, this is how we create the solution. Somebody who's very high on the attuned portion says, well, how is this affecting the individual? So this is where you guys are different,
Mm,
right? Because Sam absolutely wants to think about it emotionally. How does it affect other people? How does he feel about it? Right? It's how he processes, right? You, Ben, are a little bit more down the middle, right?
mm,
So you'll say, well, there's logic and there's people and there's feelings, right? And I can
mm,
I can bounce either side of it, along the way. So, that's one of the things where you guys probably show the biggest difference. The next
mm,
one is autonomous, right? Like in regards to the drive to make a decision is what I call it. And I'm clicking on this just to show people how things pop up easily, right? Sam wants collaboration in his decision making, right?
mm,
He wants input from others, and then he'll basically just say, okay, this is perfect. This is how we're going to do it. Ben, you'll you're more comfortable making autonomous decisions. You're not kind of a die on your sword kind of a guy. So,
mm,
like for myself, I'm way over here on autonomous. I'm way over here on compartmentalized. I'm way over here on directing, right?
mm,
So I'm at the extreme of like, I'll make a decision and I'll die on my sword.
mm,
And it's okay if people don't view me as friendly because I'll just make that decision. Leaders need to make hard decisions.
mm,
And it's not okay with not being viewed as friendly at times, right?
mm,
So you guys, so the harder decisions, Ben, you probably lean a little bit more towards that logic and like, okay, we'll just make it. Sam is looking for, is this the right decision for us?
mm.
Right? Or whoever's
Interesting.
involved kind of thing. Right? Now, both of you move really, really quickly. And so we put intensity, we use the word urgent. The other word that I've learned along the years is you just don't have a lot of patience when it comes to wanting to get stuff done, right? They're just like boom, 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 right? So Sam is more impatient than you, Ben, right? Like and it was funny because as we were gearing up for this podcast, like, he told you the same thing like 3 times, right? And he gave you like 3 seconds to think,
That's so true.
right? Right? He was like, Ben, Ben, right? And so it's kind of funny.
You can
He
see
was
what
like,
I'm dealing with, Al.
yeah. He was like, no, like I just said it, like fix it, like this second, this millisecond. Right? But both of you move at a pretty fast pace, right? Both of you guys move at a pretty fast pace. Now, when it comes to how do you think, right? How creative are you, right? Kind of things that nature. Well, you guys are not Albert Einstein or Thomas Jefferson or Elon
Mm,
Musk or anybody that they'd sit over here on the inventive, right?
mm,
So you don't wake up with a million ideas like running through your mind where you've got 100 things that you want to journal or talk into AI or whatever because you've just got a new idea of how to change the world, right?
mm,
One of you are really driven. But this is where this gets cool. So this bottom thing is just kind of like we're taking all this data and I'm combining it, right?
mm,
All you guys are vision focused. So even though Sam is very high on the emotion and the connection of people, notice that when it comes to reasoning, both of you lean a little bit more to the objective side.
mm,
That's on the experiential side, right? And in relationships, yeah, you're both connected, right? And so look at this here. Like you would think because Sam processes emotionally, he wants autonomous decision. But look at this. Like when it comes to how he wants to connect, he's actually more of a sniper than you are, Ben.
mm,
Right? He wants the right connections.
mm,
He's not necessarily looking for 1,000,000, and you're not either, right? But if you misinterpreted this data up here, you would think that Sam wants to be like the cheerleader of all cheerleaders,
mm,
friends with 1,000,000 people. No, 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 no. He wants to be friends with very specific people. Both of
mm.
you, right? And then
Really interesting.
systems over standards, this goes back to building the motorway, the highway. You guys are cool designing it, right? Making it cool, roundabouts, loops, whatever, but you're not the one that should be building it at all,
Yeah,
right?
we
So
realized that. That's why we hired people to help
yeah,
us. It was
so
like
now
scary how accurate this is. Al is actually quite mad. Yeah.
so what I do from here, and I'll show you, and then I'll actually give you a real scenario of of if you guys were to say, "Al, who would our next hire be?" Actually, let's just
Mm,
do that before I show you the report that I end up compiling. So if you came to me and you were like, "Al, okay, consult us. We wanna grow, we wanna scale," something like that, right? And you said, "Who should be our next hire?" Somebody who appreciates details and
mm,
precision and accuracy, and someone who wants to implement some quality, like, right, like some compliance standards, right?
Mm,
You would want you just would want somebody like that as you scale. And that's it's a different way to think when you're a big picture visionary type thinker, right?
mm,
Like where does this person who wants to implement all these workflows and the perfect system and where do they fit in my business? Well, if you think of it this way, you guys are the gas. Think of it as simple as that. You guys have a gas pedal and you guys push that gas pedal like to the max, right? You
mm,
drive fast, you're pushing, pushing, pushing. Well, who's your brake?
Mm.
mm,
Who's the person that's going to bring in some reason to be like, okay, these are all great ideas, but which one do you want to start with? And have we actually thought about how we're going to implement this? Which starts to become very, very important, right? So, in an executive recruiter lens, could you imagine, other than, okay, what kind of experience are you looking for? What kind of education are you looking for, right? When they're, interviewing, the hiring candidate, basically, right? Imagine if they started talking in a different language and said, well, are you guys looking for someone to come in and implement systems and workflows and have high quality of standards? Or do you want a leader who's absolutely disruptive and could come across as a jerk to a lot of people at times when he makes really, really hard decisions?
mm,
Both could be leaders, right? I know a founder of a company who sits on, like, they're at the edge of this detail and standards. Like, if this scale could go over, they would tip over. They're a founder of an international company. So when people are like, "Oh, CEOs, they're all big picture, they're all," not all of them,
mm,
Mm.
not all of them, right? Not all of them. So now how do you balance him out? He's never gonna scale until he gets some really visionary people in there that kinda have AKA balls of steel that are like, "No, let's gas up this plane and let's go." Because he wants everything perfect, and that's not a bad thing. It's just now understanding the dynamics of the relationship and what's a company really, really looking for, okay? So
mm,
from there, I'll just show you part 2, and I won't go through this in detail, but from there, what I would do for an executive recruiter is I create what I call a client intelligence report. So I need to know what position they're applying for. Obviously, this is my company, Cohesion HQ. I prepare it for the Miller UK Brothers executive recruiting, right? Or whatever they call.
yeah,
I give they can I've designed this report that they can go through it really fast or they can go in detail. Executive summary, simple. Leadership snapshot, simple. If they want to go deeper into the leadership tendencies, executive strength profile, because I'm doing this based on being a decision maker in a company, like when I did this for you guys. That's fine. How they communicate, how they make decisions, they can go in detail. But what I would tell you is just the value is in the leadership snapshot really quick to understand the person and then come down here to how they operate under pressure.
mm,
Because this is critical. Because when everything kumbaya, people are on their best behavior. But the minute things get a little crazy, and depending on the environment you're placing a CEO or COO, it might be a very nutty environment, right? This is how they're gonna resort back to actually working because this is absolutely their natural tendencies. And then what I tell people that are using this is look at the blind spots and look at the risk. Because imagine if an executive recruiter now tells a board, right? Let's say it's a CEO position and they're reporting to the board and they say, hey, we've got the right candidate. But I just want to make sure you're aware that because of how they operate and how they operate under pressure, you're going to see some of these things. You're going to see some of these things come out. So I don't want you to be shocked because I'm recommending this candidate for an interview because this will happen. And I'll give you a personal example, right? I was in the juvenile prison system for a long time and I ran a juvenile prison. And I had some other opportunities to clean up an entire state's juvenile prison system. And I would tell people ahead of time, like, in order to create change in this environment, if everything's gone to basically, hell in a basket kind of thing, it'll be crazy for a minute. Use of force will go up. Staff probably will be put on performance reviews. Staff will leave because it's so dysfunctional. You have to understand when someone comes in to apply structure and standards, you're going to disrupt the current status quo that's crazy. So you might all of a sudden be like, well, why is use of force gone up? Like, we hired you to calm it down. Well, it's got to go up before I can bring it down, right?
Mm,
Because people are testing, right? They're testing to see what they can get away with, what behavior. Well, it's no different in a corporation. It just wouldn't be use of force, right?
mm,
But people, if you're in a disruptive environment, people are going to push to see what they can get away with a new boss, right? Where's the limits at?
mm.
Because they're trying to see, because they're already in a situation where they're manipulating, right? So, and I can go on, but for example, when I took over one juvenile prison, I had people who created their own schedule that had Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday off, and they only worked Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And there was a group of 4 individuals that all had that same schedule. And I'm like, "Well, how'd you get that schedule?" "Oh, we came up with it." "Huh? Who allowed you to come up with it?" And if you came from that environment, you knew that that's not a schedule, right?
Mm,
That's just not a schedule. And so, nobody has Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday off in 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 that world. So, weekends and all that other holidays, that's just part of the grind because, prison never shuts down, right?
mm.
So, yeah, inmates don't go home for, like, a holiday pass, kind of thing. But yeah, does that answer your question on now?
Yeah, absolutely. It's fascinating. Yeah, yeah, it's really interesting. Um, can you send us those sheets afterwards, Al? I would
Absolutely.
love to see them. But yeah, I actually find that quite scary how accurate that was for me personally, and a reflection on, because we're bringing in people into our business right now, Al, and the things you mentioned is kind of what we're filling in. We didn't know we were, but I think subconsciously those are the people we're looking for. But you've kind of like laid it out, and it's really fascinating, man.
Yeah,
Really interesting tech.
yeah, no, yeah.
What are the risks for me? I think I've read some of them for Sam. What are the risks for me, Al? Just out of curiosity.
You move quick. You both move very quick,
Okay, so
right?
there's similar risks, I'm
So,
guessing.
well, here's the thing: when you move really fast, you leave people behind,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And when you leave people behind, this is where you'll come off different to Sam, right? Because you're a little bit more on that logical side, a little bit more of the matter of fact. When you leave people behind, you'll be like, "See ya," right? Sam will be
that
moving
sounds so mean.
fast.
I don't feel like I'm
I
like, no,
know.
it sounds so.
Right? Sam will be moving forward with his hand out, right?
Mm.
Like, "Come on, man, come on." You know what I mean? Like, keep up," and you're like, "They can't keep up," and he's like, "No, they can keep up."
Leave him, Sam. Leave him.
Right, right, and so you gotta understand when people move that quick and you guys have high influence where you wanna shape decisions, is not everybody moves at our pace, and I say our pace because I'm also highly influenced very fast, right?
Mm,
Not everybody moves at our pace, and so as a leader, you have to recognize when is that pace required and needed, and when can you actually just take one step back, and this is where that person with the brake can really help, right? You can take one step back and say, "Okay, you understand the vision. I've given you like, hey, I wanna be able to get this done in like the next." Any CEOs, like, "Can we get this done by Friday?" Right? And
mm,
you need that person to be like, "Absolutely not."
mm,
Right?
mm.
"Well, how long is it gonna take?" "Well, probably a month." "Okay, fine." Right? So the break person then is the person that brings along everybody else to build it out kind of thing, right? And they build
Mm,
it out with flow. Now, along the way, how many times do you think the impatient CEO is gonna ask if it's done?
mm,
1,000,000, right? Because in his or her mind was like, "I know I gave them a month, but, they'll probably get it done sooner," right? So then, like, you'll check in with people, "Well, how's it coming?" Right? And this is how you are. You're like, "How's it coming, man?" Right? Like, "Is it are we good? Are we getting closer?" Right? You're literally scaring the shit out of people, right?
mm,
Because you're so goddamn intense. And so people are like, "Dude, up." Right? So this is where self-awareness comes in too, right? The greatest leaders are self-aware, and they
mm,
know where their strengths are, they know when to utilize them. They know when you need that, AKA that pit bull mentality, right? "We gotta fight the fight here, right? And I'll
mm,
take the bull by the reins and I'm gonna go. Don't worry, I'll die on my sword if we fail. It's okay." But they also have to know when they gotta just take a step back and be like, "Okay, is this is my attitude, is my personality good for the greater good, right?
Mm,
And that's really hard if you're reporting to a board, and ROI is the most important thing, right? You're scaling from 26 million to 52 million, and you've got a 5-year metrics, something like that, right? So if you only go on year one from 26 to, let's say, 28, 29, you're off target to hit 52, right? So the pressure is building on that CEO, because if they don't hit target, they're getting fired, right?
mm, yeah.
Period. Private equity owns the company now. They're definitely getting fired, right? You didn't hit 52 million, right? For example. So that pressure now they're yielding into everybody else versus being able to compartmentalize it and say, okay, let me take a step back. I'm leading the bus, but I can't do this by myself. I need these individuals to come along the way. I need people on the right bus in the right seat that are offering XYZ roles. And then how do I push them a little bit, not to the point where they crumble, but to where they grow. And as we grow, we excel, right? Kind
Mm,
of thing like that. And that's the trick. That's really, really the trick of when companies are like, well, how do we predict execution? Well, understand your people, make sure your people are aligned, teach them how to deal with pressure and grow, because you'll create trust. Once you have trust and clarity, you'll be able to execute. Right?
mm,
So, and what I'm giving you an example of is your executive recruiters, your audience. My guess is that's not how they're talking to the employer, right?
mm,
About really understanding the inner workings. And I know if I was an executive recruiter, like if this was my business, right? And I was an executive recruiter, I get hit up by them all the time, right? Like, oh, we could place you here, right? Is I would want XYZ company, like, coming back to me repetitively. Any opening they have, like, they're coming back to me because they're like, "Man, you're different, right? You're different. Everybody else just wants to sell me a resume. You're actually selling me the human. The
mm,
resume just comes along with the person, right?"
mm,
And let's face it, the CEO, you're making, whatever, base salary is a few $1,000,000 plus bonuses and commissions. You don't think everybody's been successful? Of course they've been successful. Or they never would have got to that level, right? So now it's, how did they create success, or how did they move the bus? How did they move the needle, right? And
mm,
and did they lose a lot of people along the way and things of that nature, right? Did they create that culture, right, where people enjoy going to work, right? And the reason I do the culture in the quotations is because culture is a result of something, right? It's a
yeah.
result. It's a result. It's a result. You can have good culture, bad culture, and that's a result of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Al, can we jump into your? So fascinated that you came from a background of juvenile prisons, and now you work with CEOs and companies. I'm just curious what you learn managing that sort of environment, and what the crossovers are, like what you learn there and what's crossed over.
Yep,
I'm really fascinated
yep,
in that.
yep, yep. Great question. So here in its most simplest fashion, in a prison system, we don't have a hiring process for inmates. We don't have a culture fit survey. We don't know the person that's coming in off the street that just got arrested, right? Or got sentenced, right? So what I tell people is, what did I learn? Is how to communicate with all walks of life,
Mm,
right? And all walks of life have to, your job is, you got to get them on the same page, because if not, you just got a disruptive cell house, right? So when I first started, it was me and 74 inmates in a juvenile prison. The capacity was supposed to be 24. That's how overcrowded we are. Super high gang violence in the early 90s here, right? A lot of gang problems. So someone would come off the street, and you had, 8 Crips ready to beat up a blood the minute he walked in the door. Well, you gotta calm all that chaos down, right? Or it's just gonna be a nightmare. So you realize inherently that it's like, okay, how do I get the desired behavior out of each individual, right?
mm,
And you also start to say, okay, well, what resources do I have? Because I don't have a choice of who's coming through the door and who's going to get put on in my pod, right, this evening. So then you have to start saying, okay, well, within their street culture, there's also rank and file, right? There's
mm,
rank and file. So now, if you got guys who have a little bit more respect on the street, I'm not going to use the word like OG, but they've got a little bit more respect, right? Or their dad's in prison, or their older brother's in prison, and he's a true OG, whatever the case may be, right? Just street politics. I realized you just go to them. It's like going
Mm.
to a manager, right? And you're like, "Hey, man, this is what I expect of you guys today. And if you choose not to control your troops, then this is what the consequence is gonna look like.
Mm.
So, you control your people, right? Because that's your job. They report to you, right? So you're also teaching them leadership, right? And at the end of the day, what are they really doing? They wanna be out of their cells, they wanna be able to play dominoes, they wanna be able to play spades if, depending on how TVs worked, right? Right? They wanted to be able to have full shower time versus you compressing it to, like, 3 minutes, right? They wanted 5 minutes, right? It's all the little things, right? And
Mm.
so you realize, like, what do you have? So the other part of juvenile corrections was I was a use of force instructor. I was on the statewide special operations response team, and I came from an athletic background. So what I realized was we never trained for comfort. We never trained for comfort, right? Ever. In anything I did athletically or in correction, we never trained for comfort, right?
Mm.
So we always trained for the worst case scenarios. And there was an expectation to be able to succeed when everything went crazy, right? And you knew who had your back and you knew who could do what. So now you start developing that trust. Remember I brought up trust earlier, right?
Mm.
You start knowing who you can trust and who will be down for you kind of thing. So with that, when I moved into the corporate sector, right? And I have a PhD in behavioral psychology, and I started looking at behavioral analytics for how people are naturally wired. My research was on how do you align them. I'm like, "Oh, okay," because nobody gives you a playbook. Like, no one gave me a playbook in prison for how to align 74 inmates, right?
Mm.
Nobody gave me a playbook when I started coaching for how to align a team. So I'm like, "Well, let me come up with a framework." But then, what was the caveat? It was, how can I introduce pressure to the private CEO? How can I introduce pressure into this environment that's not athletic, that's not AKA law enforcement, corrections, fire kind of thing, right? Where it's kinda like just an office, right? Like, how do you then in in incorporate pressure? So those are the lessons, right? That what I realized is if I can align 74 inmates from, we'll say, 8 different street gangs and we have no incidents, we have no issues, they're playing dominoes together, they're playing basketball, right? All of a sudden, all this street stuff is street stuff, right? And then if I could continue to train my staff to be more effective in use of force, etcetera, why can't we now apply this to the everyday world,
Mm.
right? So it's how you do it. It's your attitude towards doing it, right? So for me, I'm very comfortable with violence because I fought in the ring for a very long time. And
Mm.
I don't see that as like a badge of honor, but I'm very comfortable. Like I don't freak out, right? Someone tries to
Mm.
punch me. Okay, right? How do I would not have the same expectation of a 15-year-old kid that came to me who's never boxed
Mm.
to feel comfortable getting punched at. I gotta teach him, right? I gotta teach him. I gotta mold him. I gotta create drills that continue to slowly increase intensity to where one day, like them just slipping a punch is no big deal. Someone's gonna hit
Mm.
you, right? Kind of thing like that. And so those are the lessons I took from just my government service career, right? And juvenile corrections and said, we can now apply this to the everyday world. And it's really a lot of it is about in those environments, we gave people opportunities to grow. If we were showing something new on the restraint technique, like we didn't expect people to get it right the first time,
Mm.
right? And then we would put red man suits, for example, and be the bad guy, right? And so we would simulate like how bad of a bad guy are we going to be so that people got confidence as the situation got crazier.
Mm.
Right? Like, kind of thing like that. So, you knew if you were in a red man suit who was always like the instructors, "Okay, am I gonna go like 100% and I'm gonna make this dude really, really work? Or am I gonna go like 30% because somebody still is trying to gain confidence?" You know what I mean? Because, not everybody in the prison system is athletic and fit,
Mm.
right? So now you got injured. Right? I mean, you've got people who are psychiatrists, psychologists, who have to go through use of force training, and they don't even think they'd ever have to subdue an inmate, right?
Mm.
But they gotta go through it, but they're 65 and 120 pounds, and they're, you know, like violence isn't their thing. But you
Mm,
got to build that psychologist's confidence so that they feel comfortable in the event they ever did have to do use of force with an inmate. And an inmate could be 300 pounds and they wake up at 3 a.m. doing 300 burpees every morning. And they
mm,
just decide to go off in your office that day.
mm.
Yeah. Oh,
Nuts.
right. Right.
Can't imagine
Nuts.
how you what was it like working there? Were you like quite comfortable and happy, or was it like, because I it sounds like quite a
Loved it.
stressful. You say you loved it?
Loved,
Really?
loved
Wow.
it. Loved
That's so
it.
funny.
It was I love the environment. I love the camaraderie. The inmates are they're inmates, and you know that's a whole different like podcast, right?
Mm,
And but I loved the environment. I missed the environment. I was very high ranked in the environment, but I worked my way up, right?
mm,
Um, and so people were always like, "Why'd you leave?" Like I was at a lunch meeting yesterday, and people were like, "Man, you would still be really good at this." I would. I just got tired of the bureaucracy, and I got
mm,
tired of the politics, right?
mm,
And you know, you get to a certain rank, well, that's really all you're dealing with. You're not sure, at some level, you're still dealing with the inmates per se because it's, you know, it's your prison or whatever, but you're really just dealing with decisions and budget
mm,
and things of that nature. Um, and so I just kinda got tired of the system per se,
mm,
not the environment, but the system.
mm.
Mm.
Makes
Right?
sense.
Yeah. But I loved it. I loved it. I loved every minute of it, man. There's nothing like going to work and not knowing what's gonna happen.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And you said before, Al, that you like to introduce pressure. Like if you found a company and you, what do you mean by that? Like, and why you use the word pressure specifically? Is that for to introduce more action, or like what's the reason for that?
Yeah. So most people view pressure as negative, right? You say the word pressure and they're like, what's this dude gonna talk about? Like, well, why is he talking about pressure? Because they want the calm day, right? And don't get me wrong, like in law enforcement corrections, you want the calm day. Like, don't get me wrong, right? You just through training and environment get comfortable when it's not a calm day, right? So so the whole thing is if you think in the corporate world, right, where do people get burnout and they get stress and things of that nature? It's when the pressure hits, but it's just a different type of pressure. It's deadlines. It's, "Well, we need you to redo this." "Well, can you get it done by Friday?" "Well, I'm flying to China and I need this done before you guys leave. I don't care how many hours you put in." Right? That's pressure, right? That's
Mm,
pressure in a corporate type setting. So the question is, okay, well, why could we do something systematically different so we're not always being so reactive, right? So that's a systems, workflow, organizational issue, right? The other part of it is when these things happen, because they're going to happen, are your people equipped to be able to handle it? So let's think about what you need to handle pressure, right? And I'm going to put it in a context of teaching a child how to ride a bike or drive a car. Okay. You as a parent, it's a little scary, especially when training wheels come off. Or you know, your kid's like, instead of driving around the neighborhood, like you're gonna go on a main street and you're like, "Oh god, how's this gonna go?" Right? It's a little nerve-wracking, but it's also nerve-wracking for them. But think about your attitude. You're willing to teach, you're willing to allow them to make mistakes. You pretty much know they're gonna make mistakes. You're encouraging. You're not screaming and yelling at them because it won't give you the desired outcome. Sometimes they just wanna quit. And sometimes you let them quit, or sometimes you're like, "Well, let's just do one more try, and then you can take a break, and we'll come back to it tomorrow." So what's really different, it's how you lead, right? It's how you lead. So if you think about now, like, how do you lead into the corporate environment so people can handle pressure? Well, number 1, do you think that when bosses start yelling, people have clarity, or are they confused? Or do they feel undervalued, right?
mm,
Yeah.
They're valued and sometimes they're confused, right? And especially a CEO who's visionary and they're moving quick, man, they might say 20 different things in like 3 minutes. And people are like, "So what am I supposed to do?" Right? They're like, "What am I supposed to do? Like, I don't know what to do." Like, Caduceus is screaming and yelling, but I still don't know what to do. Well, just get the shit done. Get what done? Right? But they don't talk back like that, right? They just sit there and they're like, "Oh god, I hate my life." Right? And so they're like, "Why am I here? I should look for another job while I'm on the job," which is a true statistic, by the way. It's actually we're now at 31%. According to Gallup, we're at 31% of people are actively disengaged on the job every single day. So they're
Wow,
looking for a job while they're on the job every single day,
crazy.
right? And
Mm,
if we went with passively disengaged, it goes up to like 70%. But
mm,
like actively, it's like 31%. That's not a good statistic, Mr. CEO. Like you're
mm,
paying them so they can go find another job. You need to fix that. That's a leadership issue, right?
mm,
Or workplace. So the thing is how do we do that, right? So in my world, we used to do a lot of mock scenarios, right? So and it was very important that people had the tools to succeed, right? What are the tools? And people have strengths, right? And it's knowing how to utilize their strengths. So some people are very calm in chaos. Some people are basket cases in chaos, right? So if you're working as a team, imagine how important it is if you know the pressure is hitting, you rely on the person who's good in chaos, right? Person who's really, really good. And that's your leader. So title becomes irrelevant, right? And see, this is where companies they're kind of like, well, yeah, but I'm the boss. I know, but you're a basket case. So you need to let this dude take charge, right? Yeah, but he's
mm,
not the boss. Like, no, I understand he's not the boss. I think he knows he's not the boss. I think you've all told us like 100 times that he's not the boss, but he's good under chaos. So how can you relinquish your title momentarily and say, okay, this is the best person to be able to lead the troops in this mission per se,
mm,
right? And so now what you're doing is you're utilizing people to their strengths, right? Again, you're just utilizing people to their strengths. So depending on the corporation, depending on the leader, we can come in and we can create scenarios to say, okay, how do we in your world, how do we create a little bit of excitement or a little bit of anxiety, right? And how do we train people to be prepared for that so they know it's coming, right? So that when it comes, it's not reactive. They've drilled it. They all know how each other operate, and you're going to get the desired result that you're looking for, right? Which is
mm.
execution at the end of the day. I don't care what company you're with, right? You just want execution. And also, you learn a lot about yourself under pressure. You learn a lot. So
Mm,
if you can have a culture where title is title, like, I don't really care, but you're willing to show vulnerability because it's gonna come out. That's what pressure does. It reveals your cracks, right? People are like, "Well, diamonds are made out of pressure." No, pressure reveals your cracks. That's what it
mm,
does, right? So now you really start saying, "Okay, how does this person react?" Right? Let's even take something as, I'm making fun of the CEO who's being super intense. And the reality is because a lot of high visionary, urgent people lack equanimity at times of urgency and, like, where passion's hitting the wall, right? Does that make
mhm,
sense? And so you just I mean, you just have a go get it kinda attitude, right? Like, you think of a coach, right? You're winning 60-0, Nick Saban's still screaming on the field because his players didn't execute correctly, and people are like, "They're winning 60-0. That's irrelevant." You think he gives a shit about this game? No, he wants his guys performing in the 4th quarter. That's what he cares about, and he knows if they play like this against another reputable team, they're gonna get hammered.
mm.
That's what's important to him, right? So when you start thinking about that, it's like we're just increasing standards. So I don't want pressure to be viewed as negative. I want pressure to be viewed as growth. And I want leaders to say, I'm willing to teach people how to go through pressure and how to coach them through pressure. And one of the things I talk about, like in my frameworks, is understanding when people are off and understanding when people are stressed and understanding that people react to pressure differently. Right. So now
Mhm.
you as a leader, you gotta help them learn how to cope so they can perform.
That was gonna be my next question actually, yeah, which is people that 'cause I suspect that it's really valuable to be able to cope under pressure, but everyone has a different threshold as to, like, what they can cope with and how they react. From your experience, I'm guessing you can train people, to cope under pressure, and then how again, it's quite a broad question, but my instantly, I'm thinking, can it be trained and how long does it take? That I know it's a very, like, specific question, but I'm wondering if you have any experiences from that process?
Yeah, a lot. Some never get comfortable, right at
Mm,
the end of the day. Um, and so you have to understand, like, where's their tipping point, right?
mhm. Yeah.
And and then it gets to you have to start asking yourself, like, okay, this just this isn't their cup of tea. right, for pressure, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they bring value to the organization, right? They just bring value in a different capacity, right? And so you just have to start learning. And I can tell you, like, coming from high stake environments, not everybody was comfortable with violence, right? Some
Mm,
were, and you always knew who your alpha dogs were, and that's male or female. Does that make sense? Like
mm,
gender, no part of this. That was the beautiful thing about that environment, right? Didn't matter what color, what age, what gender, what religion, what it didn't matter, man. Right?
mm,
Like it had zero impact, right? You just knew who could perform when things went wild.
mm,
And and I think it was, if I look at my own personal, like, self-awareness here, right, as I went through the ranks, I was that gung ho alpha male, right? I
mm,
was athletic, I got close quarter combat, right? I was comfortable with it. So first, I looked down on staff members who didn't have that same aptitude, right?
mm.
Who were maybe more of the soothers, and when we should have gone use to force, they still wanted to talk, and I'm like, "Let's just knock this fool out, right? Like, this is crazy. What are you doing?" And but disclaimer, we use the least amount of force necessary in all situations. But here's the thing, right? I would look down on those staff, right? Like,
Mm,
at first, right? I was young, right? I was fresh out of college, and I would look down on those staff, and I'd be like, "Oh, man, they're worthless, right? Like, what good are they?"
mm,
Right? What good are they when we can't find them when crisis is going on because they happen to be in the bathroom, right? What would you do? Run to the bathroom when you heard Mayday,
mm,
right? Like it's crazy, or whatever the case may be. And then I started realizing, not by myself, but by my superiors who took a mold to coach me, right? And pour into me because they saw talent. They saw raw talent. But they were like, dude, you're never gonna move up until you learn how to, right?
mm,
And so then you start learning at, okay, well, what strengths did they bring to the organization, right? At times you do need somebody who's got that soothing personality, who has the ability to communicate, to de-escalate, right? Things of this nature. Or they they might have had a different value in how they ran something and things of that nature. So then you start realizing, like, okay, well, yeah, the way for this to work is it's gotta be really, really well-rounded. And so,
mm,
one of the things I went to, drill instructor school for, that they had a program for, people in, running boot camp type juvenile correction facilities, right? And one of the things they talk about is, like, there's the hammer, so the demander, right? There's the motivator, and then there's a soother. And in order to develop a proper team, it's not that you necessarily need to be able to put the different hats on. If you can learn that, you'll be really, really valuable. But your team needed to have the different hats and different roles. And I wrote about that in my book. Like, when we did Hell Day, we all knew, like, we went 4 hours straight of just pressure, pressure, pressure to these kids that were brought into our facility. And it was a ton of, like think of day one boot camp, just nothing but screaming and yelling. We're getting them puking, right? Like, they hate their
wow.
life. So, how did I commit this crime, right? But we never talked to staff for 4 hours because we each knew our role,
Mm,
right? And believe it or not, obviously more than often, I was the hammer, right? I was the dude, man. I was the lead DI. But sometimes I'd flip a script and become a soother,
mm,
or sometimes somebody else would take the lead hammer and I'd be the soother on that hell day, right? Which
mm,
doesn't really suit my personality per se, but you've got to develop the skill set to do that. And so,
mm,
when you start thinking about that, you figure out that there's value in everybody, and it's,
mm,
are they used correctly, and when do you use them correctly? Because even in a point of pressure, let's say that staff that tends to not do well and they're on that tipping point, right? Or their employee, well, you know what they're probably really good at? Is checking in on everybody else to see how they're doing,
mm,
right? So that's their role, right? Deadlines hit, pressure's on, CEO just yells at everybody, and that's the person that goes by and is just like, "Hey, man, are you good? Is there anything I can do for you?" Right? "Is
mm,
there anything you need? Is there anything I can get clarified for you?" You need that role too. You need that role too. So instead of putting them into, like, let's jump into the firefight, it's like, let's have them circumvent the firefight and be that person that brings that point of calmness or rationale, right? We're not making excuses. We're not justifying anything. They're just giving people an outlet.
Mm. I'm
Just
really
as
sorry,
important.
guys. I've got a meeting that I've got to prepare for in 5 minutes. But Al, this was super insightful, mate. I absolutely loved the beginning half of the call and learning about your experience in the juvenile correction industry. We could probably do a whole podcast just on that. I find it absolutely fascinating. So thank you for coming today, man. Really appreciate your time. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to this episode. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and Spotify. Tune in for another episode next week, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon. Peace and love.